Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about X-Men the Animated Series, Season 3, Episode 19, or Episode 45 of the show in chronological order. This one's Love in Vain. It premiered on February 10th in 1996. So if you haven't seen the episode, I'd advise you to watch it before watching this review, or you're going to get spoiled. That being said, jumping right in, and you were warned. I feel like this episode, some airings of it had a recap. I had some DVDs of the X-Men animated series before they actually came out on Disney DVD. And when Love in Vain began on this particular set of DVDs I bought off somebody, I guess he recorded them from TV and dubbed them to disc. That's the only way you could get the entire series back in the day when, DVDs were starting to be released. This one had a recap of Rogue and Cody, and I don't remember seeing that when it aired. The first time it did air, first time it would premiere, I would see it. I taped it on VHS one Saturday. Would have been February 10th, 1996. I think it was around the same time the big Alien Rangers miniseries was airing on Fox Kids back in 96. So you had new X-Men, new Power Rangers, but you didn't get the recap, I don't think, when this episode first aired. I love the opening because you have Rogue, and she is, of course, feeling left out. She can't touch anyone, and this is something that we've seen her struggle with before in the animated series. Of course, whenever she touches someone, she drains their energy, and she just cannot kiss anyone. She can't touch anyone, and I think. Even when I was a kid seeing this show for the first time, I figured that she was looking at Scott and Jean because, it takes place, I think, in the mansion and they're going on a date, and she's just not having a very good night because she wants to be with someone too. She wants to touch someone, and it's just not happening for her, of course. And of course that sets up her and Cody. And I love this bit in the episode because one of the first X-Men episodes I ever saw when I was a kid was, of course, The Cure. That was one of the first X-Men VHS tapes that I bought as a kid. So we're introduced to Cody in that episode during the flashback where Rogue is remembering how her powers were revealed for the first time. And she kisses him, and of course she drains his energy, and then of course later on we find out that her dad kicks her out because he finds out she's a mutant, and so she just up and leaves. Of course she's hurt, and she doesn't get in contact with Cody again. I'm sure she probably feels like he wants nothing to do with her, just like her dad wants nothing to do with her. So, she just leaves. And here in this episode, while Rogue is struggling with what she's struggling with, you have Wolverine making a startling discovery. You've got this ship that crash lands, I think, or I guess it actually lands. To me, when I first watched it, it sounded like a crash landing, but of course I'm sure it's a conventional landing. And we're introduced to the Colony. And when I was a kid, when this episode aired for the first time, I was thinking it was actually the Brood because, well, I mean, you sit at the lunch table with kids who read X-Men comics and you hear about the Brood. They were pretty big in the 80s. They had an action figure of a Brood alien. I never picked him up, though, but he was everywhere. They had like a whole bunch of Brood. I don't know if he wasn't selling very well. Now I wish I had picked him up because I didn't really know much about him back then. I remember a kid on the bus at one point telling me, "Oh yeah, they're these aliens and they possess you, and then you turn into one of them." And so you hear these inhuman growls and things from the ship, and Wolverine tries to fight him. Of course, he is infected and taken to their ship. He of course gets out, but he's infected by the Colony. In the cartoon, they're the Colony. I think they were supposed to originally be the Brood, but they really had to water them down because the Brood are straight up horrific in comics, which I would have really liked to have read that story arc if they made audio adaptations of X-Men comics back in the day. Of course they don't, but maybe at some point they'll give us the proper version of the Brood in X-Men 97. There's so much I'd love for them to cover in that show. But in this episode here, well, they're the colony. I think from what I've heard over the years, they're more reptilian than they are insectoid. They're more, I don't know, lizard-like, whereas the Brood are insectoid in the comic books. Man, I wish I picked up that action figure. So you have Wolverine, and he's trying to tell the X-Men what he's witnessed. In the meantime, you have Rogue. She's just about had enough of not being able to touch anyone. Gambit comes along, and I like how he's wanting to take her out on a date. But of course, Rogue and Gambit really never get to do anything together, because right when Gambit's going to ask her out, you have Cody calling, and Rogue... Well, I think to Rogue, Cody's the one who got away. She would have had a relationship with him, I do believe, if she hadn't been kicked out of her own home by her dad and run away to join Mystique. And, of course, now that we've got X-Men 97, we know that she knew Magneto before she joined the X-Men. So, yeah, she's really wanting to see him again. I like what Lenore Zann does with Rogue, of course, in all of her performances as Rogue. But here, when she goes to meet Cody, she's talking to herself like, oh, is it really you? Do I really want it to be you? She's just kind of nervous, and she's excited to see him. And there's just something every one of these cast members do with these characters in roles and instances like this that, well, I think it was a cut above a lot of other animated shows in the day. Shows like Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, the animated series back in the day. I think all of these voice artists were stellar performers, and I always remember Lenore here as Rogue when she meets Cody, and she's nervous, she's excited. You see Rogue going from this tough as nails character to, oh gosh, I haven't seen this guy in years, and what am I going to think of him? What's he going to think of me? And she's kind of like excited to have this guy back in her life, and you can tell by the way that she's delivering her dialogue here. It's like getting that part of her teenage years back that she never had. And they go out on a date, and of course Cody is in cahoots with the colony, and Rogue gets infected too, and he's like, oh, now we can touch each other, Possum. He calls her Possum in this episode, and she hates that. I like that that we find out about his little endearing nickname for Rogue, and of course Rogue hates that name. I don't really care for it either. Why would you call your significant other Possum? It really doesn't make any sense to me, and I like that Rogue just not too keen on that nickname at all. You have Rogue going back to the mansion, and of course when she asks for time off, Xavier's like, nah, this is a bad time, Wolverine's in trouble. And Rogue, of course, she stands right up to him. She's like, I've been with you guys for years, and this is the only time I have ever asked for a minute to myself, so I'm going. And she just hightails it out of there with Cody. And I also really like Cal Dodd's performance in this episode. Well, I mean, like I said, these guys all do spectacular work when voicing the characters, but during the transformation sequence here, as Wolverine is, becoming one of the colony, I want to call them a brood so bad, but I mean, I don't really think they're necessarily the brood, more like a watered down version. It just, with all the screaming and the roaring and the bellowing that he does, that always stood out to me. When the other X-Men, I get the call from Wolverine, and they go to investigate. You got Beast, you got Gambit, you got Storm. I don't think anyone else is showing up. Of course, Scott and Jean get to go on their little date. I don't know why Professor Xavier. I guess he probably tried to call them, but I don't know. Maybe Jean turned their phones off, and she's like, "Yeah, we're not taking any calls. We haven't gotten to go on a date in forever. I've been possessed by the Phoenix. We're having some us time." So Scott and Jean, aside from that little cameo, they're not in the episode. And so you've got that one scene where the X-Men are surrounded. Wolverine starts to transform into one of the colony. And you've got Rogue, of course. She finds out that Cody has been in cahoots with them all along. And it's heartbreaking for Rogue because, of course, she can't be with anyone. Even now, you have her infected along with Logan. I don't know if the other X-Men were infected too. I think it might just be Logan and Rogue here, or Marie, if you want to call her that instead. And, Cody's like, well, it was the only way to get you back, Possum. Well, he doesn't call her Possum again, but you get the drift. He's wanting to be with her. He feels like turning Rogue into one of the colony is the only way that they're able to touch. So he's manipulated her into, splitting off from the team. I do not agree with that at all. Bad Cody. Very, very bad. It's a pretty horrific episode, even for a kid show, though. I think even though they watered it down, they didn't really call the colony the Brood. They look different. At the same time, you've got a bit of body horror in this episode because Rogue and Wolverine are turning into members of the colony, and it is a very painful transformation, as the current queen of the colony tells Rogue at one point in the episode, as Rogue is going through her own transformation. Of course, you've got Wolverine, who figures out how to cure them of the transformation. He's got that healing factor, and of course, it's curing Wolverine of the spores that he was infected with. So he has Rogue absorb his healing factor. Therefore, she's cured too. Still, though, it sticks out to me because of the very painful transformations. Of course, Spider-Man does something very similar in his second season. So, as I say a lot with the reviews of these Fox Kids shows, I think they go above and beyond when it comes to not pulling the punches. I mean, even though this wasn't necessarily the Brood, as I've gotten older, I see what they wanted to do, and they really tried to come as close as they could to making the colony as terrifying as they could, because you're infected, you're going through this horrific transformation, whether you want to or not. They don't really care about the hosts that they infect, just like the Brood from the comics. Whereas in this show, they keep their minds. They know who they are. The colony doesn't unalive the host, whereas in the comic books, when you're infected by the Brood, they unalive you. Your body belongs to them. Your memories and all your knowledge is kind of transferred over to them. But when you're infected by a Brood, that's it. Here, though, from what I can tell, since it is a Fox Kids show, I think they're probably able to keep their minds and their consciousness and their all that good stuff. Kind of wish this one was a two-parter rather than just one episode. I don't remember whether or not I knew what the Akanti, the ship that, or the creature that the colony came to Earth in, or whether I don't remember if I knew what it looked like right away. I would imagine my brother probably described the creature to me. I've heard it described as a giant space whale. All I can think of now are the Purrgil from Star Wars, but that's totally different from Purrgil. Just a big giant, I don't know, space whale, I guess. So you have Xavier back at the mansion, and while Rogue and Wolverine have taken care of the spores, they still have to escape. So he makes contact with the Akanti. And I like how Xavier, even though he's at the mansion, he still manages to come up with a solution. And the Akanti's crooning, I guess, is very, well, it's unpleasant to the ears of the colony members. So yeah, you've got the X-Men escaping, and I think the scene that stuck out to me at the end of the episode was, of course, Rogue having to say goodbye to Cody for a second time. She cannot be with him even now because, well, I mean, she was manipulated into the situation. Then, of course, at the end of the episode, when she asks him to come with him, I think he just shrieks at her. I think that's him. There's no audio description for these episodes, so yeah, he doesn't tell her I'm staying. He just kind of hisses and shrieks. So I wonder if if you're not a mutant, if you're just normal, I don't know how it works. You could very well lose your mind, your consciousness to the colony. Oh, of course, the Queen is able to have a conversation. You have that other, I guess, lieutenant or general or whatever he is. He's able to speak as well. I'm not really sure what we would have seen if these guys had been brought back. Maybe they will at some point in X-Men 97. Maybe they'll just up and call themselves the Brood. Maybe we'll see Cody again if X-Men 97 gets more than 3 seasons. There's just so much that I wish they would revisit in that show. And this species is one of them. Although, I mean, if they want to turn around and, introduce a different species entirely, because, the Brood, they're more insectoid in the comics, and they're just vicious. That would be okay too, although I don't know if we'll see the Brood in 97. I hope we do, because I can't really experience the story from the comics. I just have to read about who they are, what they did, your basic facts and figures and stuff like that from various articles online. But they're a really interesting race. I think I give the episode a 9.5 out of 10, and I think that's mainly due to the performances of Marie, Lenore, Zann, Cal Dodd. I think the cast did a fantastic job here. They put so much emotion into their roles, the characters they play, as they always do. Jeez, man, kudos to both Lenore, Zann, and Cal Dodd for the screaming during the transformation sequences here. Oh boy. That actually freaked me out a bit when I was a kid and watching it for the first time. I'm sure the audio description, if we'd gotten it, that probably would have made it even more interesting. We still don't have that for for the entire animated series, actually. Maybe one of these days we'll get that, and I'll be able to appreciate the episode even more. Not that much in the way of fight scenes in the episode. We do get Wolverine fighting the colony here and there. But I think most of what this episode delivers is, more emotional. It's more in the dialogue. And I mean, I really had a good time with this episode. And this is the end of season 3. If you're watching the show in chronological order, next time we're going to be talking about season 4, episode 1, Juggernaut Returns. That's another one of my favorites. So be here for that one. In the meantime, don't get infected by any spores. Stay away from anyone who, tells you they're a member of the colony, wants you to hop aboard a spaceship, because you might turn into a lizard thing. Not really. But yeah, joking aside, till next time.